When it comes to generosity, most of us want to do the right thing. But what if good intentions are not enough? In this episode, we are invited to think more clearly about charity, about impact, and how Christians can give in ways that truly, truly changes lives. Drawing from the principles of effective altruism and grounded in the teachings of Jesus, we explore how to steward not just our money, but our time and our talents and even our careers with wisdom and intentional purpose. JD Bauman is my guest today on the show. He is one of the co-authors of All the Lives You Can Change, Effective Altruism for Christians, a forthcoming book that combines moral clarity with practical strategy. He leads Effective Altruism for Christians, a global community committed to stewarding resources with wisdom and compassion, and he serves as the executive director of Christians for Impact, nonprofit helping Christians take on the world's most pressing problems through their careers. I'm Jake Doberenz, and this is Christianity Without Compromise, a podcast for Christians who love Jesus but are tired of culture war faith. Now, let's get to rebuilding a faith that actually looks like Jesus. JD, it is really good to have you on Christianity Without Compromise today. I'm excited.
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes. I appreciated your book. I enjoyed it. I wrestled with it. All the Lives You Can Change. And I'm excited to kind of tease out some of the things that I found most fascinating today that I think other people will find fascinating. But, I get to create the interview, so we'll go down the threads that I want. And then people can read the book, right, to learn the rest. So, but I appreciate it. And I wanted to make clear that I did like the book. I'll maybe push back or ask some questions about some things, but that's out of a spirit of love, of respect. So just so everybody listening and you, we're all on the same page here.
That's right. Test everything and hold fast to what is good.
Oh, beautiful. Love it. Yes, 100%. So I want to start with your origin story here, kind of how you got involved in all of this. You have some really cool co-authors, but you yourself have a story and have some cool things about you. And I know that back in high school, I believe, or sometime in your school age years, you sold candy to raise money for charity. And you've said that you didn't necessarily think too much about where the money went, but you gave it to charity, which is really cool, by the way, for any kind of high schooler. Now, take us back to that time and then tell us how you entered the world of effective altruism, please.
Yeah. So I'm JD. I direct the Christian community of effective altruists. And yeah, it goes way back. So I was born in Orlando. My parents were with missions. My dad was with Wycliffe Bible translators for decades. So we were on support. We lived off of the donations of generous Christians. And so really instilled into our livelihood, our household, was this idea that everything we have belongs to God, right? Everything we have belongs to God. And so when I was in middle school, I saw this opportunity to sell candy to other middle school students. It was a ripe market and it was underexploited. You might call it a black market, but it wasn't exactly permitted. But take an opportunist middle schooler and give him 1,000 airheads and he can make $1,000 with that. Or that's about what I raised after a couple of years. But I saw the opportunity and I was convicted by certain causes. My father's Mennonite and was raised with this Jesus ethic of caring for the least of these. And I couldn't see what I could do with the money that would be more valuable than supporting some global health charities at the time. I also supported a local pro-life clinic, just helping mothers raise their children that they hadn't exactly expected. And so that's how I guess got hooked on raising money for good causes.
Awesome. And I do want to share, I mean, I used to teach middle school. And there were some very enterprising kids, and I love it. I'll say the schools I was a part of, they shut those down. They did not let the kids sell candy, which is unfortunate. I don't know that they would have necessarily used it for the same reasons you did. I'll tell you, one kid came to school with melted popsicles and still made money selling those. They were just juice in a bag.
It's just such a
But
dry market. You can bring wet popsicles and still pop a
yeah.
profit. Yeah. No, I got caught once, but it's a very evangelical
Okay.
bubble, right? So like I just told my teacher I was raising money for for pregnant, desperate mothers, and
Wow.
she literally looked the other way and said, "I'll let you do this, but don't let anybody else know." So
Brilliant, brilliant. Love it. Thanks for giving us the behind the scenes there. And so how did that lead to you kind of learning about effective altruism? How did that pop up? How'd you get involved in
yeah,
that?
I through a random chain of events got a job in Manhattan selling gold bars. Gold's really in the news, right? Just hit all-time highs, and my brother was selling gold in New York City, and I was 18. I got like a great college scholarship, but my brother was like, "Hey, why go to college when you can fly to New York City and sell gold with me?" And learn a lot and make a lot of money. And I thought like I want to study philosophy, but I can always go study philosophy. Maybe I should go do the gold thing now. So flew to New York uh, and was selling gold. So people call me up. They say, I'd like X number of gold bars, and I tell them, what type of gold do you want, and we'd sort that out, and I'd set the price, and we'd make a deal, and then I would ensure the shipment of gold bars to their house, to their vault, and pocket a profit of that. And I did that for a couple of years, and it was good. It was good, and I still felt pretty convicted that I should use the money for good, and I was more and more seeking to follow after Jesus in a radical way. And when you read the Sermon on the Mount, you read, "Blessed are the poor, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." When you read Jesus's ethical teachings, not the culture war issues of the time, but you read what Jesus really cared about, what he really talked about,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't about building up treasures on earth. It's about building up treasures in heaven, right? And it's not about being loud vocal Christians to stand out for the sake of standing out. It's to stand out because you're a blessing for others, being radical in your conformity to Christ, who is the perfect likeness and the image of God. So when I read the Gospels, I saw Jesus, he says, "Where your treasure is, there your heart is." And, he tells the rich young ruler, "Sell your possessions and give to the poor." And I felt myself like I was, maybe not as rich as many are, but in some sense, I had a small fortune like the rich young ruler. And me holding on to this was spiritually corrupting, but it was also an opportunity to bless others and to really live into the Jesus ethic.
Yeah, nice. I do have to ask though, you're selling gold. Like, did you have a pool of gold coins that you like bathed in or anything like that? Like, I do feel like
The
I need to
Scrooge
ask that.
McDuck, yeah,
Yeah, the screws with
yeah,
that because that's what came to my mind. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So that's a lot of gold, just for reference. Like a coin, I don't know, for our visual watchers, a coin this
Uh,
big is worth now about $5,000. So a coin a couple quarters in
okay.
size is like $5,000. So a whole bathtub, you're talking it's probably tens of millions or more
Okay.
worth of
Good to know.
gold. So never quite reached that status, but
Not the tens of millions.
um
Okay. Okay.
yeah. Maybe it was silver at the time. That would have been possible, but yeah. What really got me though was I learned that given the state of global poverty, it costs currently about $3,000. Then it costs about $3,000 to save a life. So uh, I did the math, and it worked out that I could be saving like over a dozen kids' lives every single year, right? If I just donated a chunk of my money to charity. And that might just sound like a number, right? But it became really real to me when I heard the story of the Good Samaritan told in a very unique way. And this is from the philosopher Peter Singer. He tells this story of, imagine you're walking home from work one day and you pass by a pond, and it's a cold winter day. There shouldn't be anyone in the pond or around the pond, but you see some splashing, right? And you look, and to your surprise, there's a child drowning in this pond. It's shallow. You could just walk into the pond and pull the child out, and you don't see anybody else there. But you think, well, I didn't, I didn't put the child in the pond. It's maybe not my problem. I have things to do, and most of all, I have an expensive suit on, and if I were to go in the pond, it would ruin my suit. And so I'm just going to walk by and not save the child. And so Peter raises the question: how would you feel about someone in that situation? Or rather, would you be that person in that situation?
Mhm.
I'm curious, Jake, how do you feel when I tell this story? Did you read that story in the book so far, or how do you respond to it now?
Yes, I did come across that in the book. I mean, right, I would like to think, like, I'm jumping in. I don't know that I own very many fancy suits like that, but, it's like, whatever it is, I would wanna save
That was
that
also my
life.
response to it as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that just seems like a no-brainer, right? That's just the right position, the right thing to
That's just the
do.
right thing to do. And Peter makes this point that actually that's the situation we're all in every day, where there are it's over 5,000 children that die every single day from some preventable disease. And for the cost of an expensive suit, you can prevent a child's death. And the fact that the children dying are not on your doorstep, but they are an ocean away, doesn't make a morally relevant difference, right? And I think Jesus would add in here, if he were present in this as he is, but if his voice were present, and I hope we can think about what he would say right now, is that every life matters to God, right? Every child is of infinite worth to God, and every person is someone for whom Jesus died, right? So if we really believe that, then I think our money should be where our mouth is. And right now, it's just not the case that most of us are doing something about a problem like global poverty. And I felt really convicted by that when I was selling gold in New York, and I was really shocked that the Christians in my life were not telling this story. That the Christian issues of the time were much more about sexuality, were much more about who you vote for, much more about hot button issues than they were about what actually matters for the
Mhm.
majority of people suffering today.
Well, I mean, you're in the right place because we are asking the questions of what actually matters. Not trying to get involved in all the cultural war issue kind of things as you mentioned there. Not that those aren't important, but there's a priority to some of the things that we need to do. So let's get out of the way though. This word effective altruism, um, and how that kind of shifts our understanding of giving to charity and also of Christian love. One line of the book jumped out to me, and I want to read this too in association with this conversation of the definition. And that line was, true love is recipient centered. This means it exhibits a certain level of results orientedness. So that's not always how we talk about love. And I don't know that the word effective and altruism or charity or giving to the poor always like comes up in conversation. So can you help us kind of explain here what's meant by effective altruism and how that kind of links to Christian love, like you've already been talking about?
Yeah, no, that's good. So effective altruism, it's two things. One, it's the simple idea that we should be effective in our altruism, that when many attempts to do good fail, we should not just do any attempt to do good, but we should find the best ways to do good using reason and evidence. And we should take action on that basis. So we shouldn't just give to charity. We should do research before we give and find the most effective charities. With our careers, we shouldn't just do whatever. If we're trying to do good with our careers, not everybody is. But if you have it as your goal to do good with your career, you should do some careful thinking and discernment about what careers might do the most good for the world and for God's kingdom, for His glory, and make a decision based on that. It's also a movement. So there began to be thousands of individuals who would take a pledge, like a 10% giving pledge or more, to give to the world's most effective charities. And people started to realize that if you're really serious about doing the most good possible, you really need to coordinate and collaborate, because a problem like global poverty, it's not a simple problem. It's actually a very complicated one. In some sense, it's simple because we can just, for instance, give money to people living in extreme poverty. But in another sense, it's quite complicated because there's a lot of theories about, like, does that even actually work? And how best can you provide resources without creating dependency or paternalism? And so it actually takes thousands of individuals really putting their minds and their hearts to this problem to really find the best, like, shovel ready opportunities to put in more money or apply more careers. So I got involved in this because after I became convicted of this example of giving money to the poor, I was wondering where are the Christians talking about this? And so
Mm.
I went off to college. I went off to Hillsdale College and studied abroad. And when I was abroad, I saw a workshop that was being held in London by some Christians at Oxford. And they were wrestling with these questions, like, can we reconcile some of these ideas of efficiency and effectiveness and our faith, right? When we look at Jesus, would Jesus have been an effective altruist, right? How does
Mm-hmm.
prayer factor in? How do we fit in the possibility that God might speak to us supernaturally about how we should allocate our resources? And so these are all discussed in this workshop. And I went to this workshop knowing like just things I'd read online, and came away like super impressed. Like I met Christians who were giving away most of their income to the global poor, to people they would never meet. I met people later who had donated their kidneys to strangers based on these arguments. I'd met people who completely changed their careers and their lives. And it was super inspiring to me in a way that I thought, yes, this is actually much closer to how Jesus would ask us to live today. And we can talk about that. Like, and I'd love to talk more about that. How would Jesus respond to this kind of calculating way of doing good? And I think my short answer to that long question is that Jesus calls us to love others with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And so if we're a thinker type and God has gifted us with a brain to optimize, it would actually be a disservice not to use that in our attempts to do good. And the kind of love that Jesus reflects and demonstrates on the cross is not a love for oneself, but it is a self-giving love, right? It's a love from oneself, flowing from oneself. You might even think the emotions of giving, or even some of the self-serving attributes of giving in a popular way or in a very socially legible way, that these are in some sense still self-serving, and ultimately not what matters when we give. When we give, what ultimately matters is the recipient, who matters to God.
Well, I really appreciate you diving into that and answering perceived objections there, because I mean that is a worry that I have. Right? Is like, as much as I like everything you're saying, like truly, I was convicted in the book about some of the organizations that say they're really doing good, but oh, fun fact, just giving a laptop to everybody doesn't like solve all the problems. And like that's convicting, right? Of what we want to do the most good.
And that's really the kicker, is because a lot of
Mhm.
Christians think that whenever they are involved in social good efforts, that they're doing good, when the
Mm.
sinfulness in the messiness of the world, that's just unfortunately not true. You can have the best of intentions and be a part of many social problems, right? I see this when I look at Christians throwing themselves into culture war issues, really like mistaking what the gospel is about, or really putting their efforts in the wrong places. In a similar way, whilst it might not be causing harm, their efforts to do good that are just like very, they add up to very little. In global health, the best interventions aren't just a little bit better than average. Researchers in a meta study found that the best interventions are tens or hundreds of times more effective than average.
Mm.
So actually, it matters a lot more about, you might think it matters a lot more, and I think it does, about where you give than even how much you give. And that's just a facet of the messy modern world.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I think that's good to remember. The world's messy. Fun fact. That definitely is something that we need to keep top of mind. And I love what you said about loving God with our minds. Like, yeah, we have the ability today to do some research, do some thinking. Um, I'm sure you wouldn't say, don't help the little Samaritan next door. It's like we don't have to pull out our calculator and just, is this the best use of our time and things like that. Like, there are some in front of you issues, right? I can imagine that being an objection. That's one of the things I first thought when I was reading the book of, what about just the immediate issues, the family that I need
Mm.
this next week, I need things like that. But you're not saying that everything turns into a math problem, right? That there are these moments, but God's given us a mind. The Spirit can work in all of this to make altruism effective in our own local communities, right?
Yeah, so the claim of the book is that we should all move towards being more impartial. So
Yes.
in the US right now, donations, about 96% of donations stay within the US, right? So we
Oh,
have
interesting. Yeah.
the wealthiest country in the history of civilization, and Christians who make up perhaps the wealthiest demographic of the wealthiest nation, giving almost all of their resources to other people in the comparatively most wealthy nation, right? To me, that just doesn't quite add up. And so while I would hope we wouldn't reject or ignore that our next door neighbor who needs who needs help. It's just a fact that almost everybody in our American society is at a better footing on a socioeconomic standing than, say, the average person living in rural India, for instance, where incomes are about 50 times less on average. That's not, again, not to say you don't have duties to your family or maybe to your local community, but I think what's abundantly clear from this, if you think about it, is when you have a chance to save somebody's life for the cost of sponsoring a picnic in your local town, one is just not morally equivalent to the other. Like the opportunity here is just so great, and it would be a shame if we mistook this opportunity to do good.
Yeah, and again, I'm in agreement. I'm in agreement with you. I think it's hard, right? Because it's harder to see the child that's thousands of miles away, but it's easier to see what's close by. So I agree with that, but that still makes it tough. There's a lot of language going around in politics and the culture about helping those that are near you. That's trendy, if you will.
Charity
And
begins at
there's
home is a
right,
common saying about this.
exactly,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Um, and then you guys even in the book address, well, what about my spouse and my family and my obligations to them? And um, it's it's a lot to wrestle with. I think this is the way of Jesus. Big fan of the radical stuff. Love that, but it's definitely a little different than sometimes we might have grown up, even in our own churches, our own context, right?
Yeah, I think what this doesn't let you say is that just because you care for your global neighbor in this kind of optimized sense, that you're off the hook for being a good Christian. That you don't need to love your next door neighbor. You don't need to care about people in your own
Yes.
town. I think that's a temptation of this, especially for people that find it easy to optimize analytically, but hard to love effectually, emotionally. And there's a certain type of person for whom, like the maths about how to, on paper, how to give money away most effectively just comes naturally, right? But for whom, like, actually caring about another human being that looks very different from them, that talks very different from them, that thinks very different from them, in person, literally handing a sandwich to that person, while that might not be as morally weighty as saving somebody's life from malaria, that's still an important aspect of discipleship, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
As Jesus says, it's not just the action that counts, but the intentions. It's a paraphrase, but he says, whoever hates his brother commits murder against him. And so I think this kind of Christian effective altruism is in many ways more demanding than traditional, let's say, like less effectively altruistic Christian moralities, because it affirms that we should attend to our intentions as well as steward the outcomes, right? It doesn't dismiss that we should love our brother next door, but it says also we should consider the brother you might never have thought about, who's living in
Mm-hmm.
another nation, another country, that you can also help.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I appreciate that. Yes, that's good.
But there
So
are also New
yes.
Testament commands about caring for your family as well. So, Paul says, whoever, I think it's in First Timothy, that whoever
Mm-hmm.
doesn't provide for his own household is worse than an unbeliever. This is, these are fighting words. So we might think we still have duties to provide for those that are charged in our care, especially our own families. But again, the book isn't saying you should neglect your family. I don't think most of us are at risk of spending too much money on our family, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
I think the opposite temptation is present, where especially in an American dream that's so consumed with accumulation and building up, a house and a wall in my pristine neighborhood with my picket fence, and our politics are very much concerned about that as well. If you think about it,
Mm-hmm.
the temptation seems more to neglect the witness that we could have to the world and the ways that we can provide for the least of these who might be beyond our own borders.
So I do want to kind of selfishly walk through kind of I don't know, an ethical issue of sorts that your book made me think of, but I've been thinking of for a while before taking a look at it. Um, and that's one of the various things that I'm involved in is anti-death penalty, kind of, which is a distinct political issue in terms of getting all that off the table in certain states, but then also for particular people. advocating that, hey, we should not kill them. State, please don't do that. Um, and I am very aware when I am engaging in something like this. Like, I'm putting effort and time and occasionally money into getting one person to not be killed by the state. And I'm very aware again, like, man, like, what else could I be doing with this? But I also don't want this person to die. But if everything turns into a scale, so this is really more of a thought experiment for you to weigh in on. If everything turns into a scale, like a potentially criminal, sometimes I think maybe unjustly in that position, other times probably not. Um, his life versus any number of people, of children's lives in different countries, like I don't know. I guess what I so worry about is what's the place of the single life of the person like that who I also don't want to be harmed, while realizing that I can technically do more effective good with my time and money and resources elsewhere in the world. So, walk us
Yeah.
again through kind
Yeah.
of how you navigate something like that.
So, yeah, this is an example of a trade-off that we face.
Hmm.
So, and it's a very real one. And I think all of us face this with the causes we care about deeply and emotionally. And there's a trade-off here, perhaps, as you said, between advocating to save, for instance, the one life who might be killed, we might think unjustly by the state,
Hmm.
and then the lives of maybe dozens or hundreds of others who might die in a less dramatic way, but from some preventable disease in some foreign country.
Hmm.
And you can only dedicate your time, your money to perhaps one of these, right? And we might try to reframe this trade-off and say, no, I can do both. But usually that's just that's just restating the trade-off. It's not actually. It's just trying to avoid it, right?
For
You
sure.
don't have an infinite amount of money. You don't have an infinite amount of time. You do have instances where you have two burning buildings. One has one person, the other has 100. You have to run into one building. And
Right.
I think your intuition about serving more people and saving more people would do more effective good. I think that's true, and I think if we give every value equal weight in God's eyes, and we see people that way, then it's not the case that we can write off the issues that affect a lot of people as we can simply write that off in favor of those helping fewer. I think we have to treat those as more important, and there's this famous saying, it's attributed to Stalin, about how the death of one person is a tragedy, death of a million is a statistic. In
Hmm.
God's eyes, the death of a million people is a million tragedies, right? And so that's not to say the death of one person isn't a tragedy and that it wouldn't be good. I think it'd be very good to dedicate your life to saving even one person's life, right? That would be a good thing. I think it would be even better, and I think a lot of people would agree it'd be even better to help even more lives than that. So not to condemn, but to really encourage people who are open to doing things that can help more people. And you might also find that the equation is quite messy sometimes. So the way that
For sure.
the way that justice is often advanced in societies is by really spotlighting individual instances of injustice or several instances of injustice that we can understand and that are very politically salient for establishing new norms and new laws that over the long term affect many, many more people. And so, you can take issues of slavery, for instance, the enslavement of millions of humans, and simply the weight of the numerical arguments. I don't think were what influenced people in passing laws that abolished slavery. It's more so the testimonies of individuals living in slavery or who've been freed from slavery. They were so powerful and so gripping and offended human dignity so much that a few stories like this and a few individuals were influential in ending slavery for the millions. So it could be that, for instance, the death penalty instance is one such issue. Still, I think it's probably not the same scale as an issue like global poverty.
Hmm.
There's a
Sure.
framework
Fair
that we
enough.
propose in the book, which is when you compare cause areas or problems, which is something that's worth doing if you're wondering where to give, or especially how to dedicate your career, to look at problems that are large in scale, but that are also very solvable, where
Hmm.
not many people, maybe maybe one person with a lot of effort or money could make a big difference on that problem. culture war issues are very much not solvable, right? They're very important, perhaps, but they're not
Very
solvable at
true.
all. They're like not very
Sure.
tractable.
Sure.
And then also
Yeah.
issues that aren't very neglected, right? That's ideally you want to tackle issues that are neglected, and take culture war issues, for instance. They're very important, but they're not very solvable, and they're really not neglected, and so it's hard to make progress on them. But take an issue like people dying of malaria, or even people. There's so many other issues like animals on industrial farms,
Hmm.
or emergent diseases, pandemics. These are things that are quite neglected and quite solvable.
Yeah. And that's good. That's what I wanted you to say. That's what I wanted to talk about. The I'm wrestling with all these ideas. The
One
best
thing that I
analogy.
found,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
very hard is like, I'd never like met Christians who were discerning their careers and their giving this way, because so much
Hmm.
of our Christian giving is like, it's communal, and there's something really beautiful about that. Like I give in the way that my church gives,
Hmm.
and I'm a part of this community that's giving, for the person or the cause that my church has decided is effective or worth supporting. And so all of a sudden, when you learn that there's actually causes that might be tens or hundreds of times more impactful, it can feel kind of lonely because you're like giving in this like seemingly radical new way. You're giving to strangers, um, or you're like giving to creatures of other species. Even like you might be giving to support animals suffering on factory farms, and you might draw some shade for that kind of thing. And so it can be very lonely, and I think, that's actually part of the reason why people find it hard, to embrace this. Is like, you need, just like with all the moral radicals, of the past, like this might seem like very ostracizing, and every idea that we accept now is like once kind of crazy. Like being anti-slavery was once quite a strange view. Being against animal cruelty was quite a strange view. Being for separation of church and state, like quite a strange view. I think like caring about strangers in other countries and like caring about animals on industrial farms, like similar kind of issue. It's like quite strange, but it's where the spirit is leading.
Okay. Yeah, I like it. I do want to cover one thing though before we kind of start to wrap up. We talked a lot about money, of charitable giving specifically. Um, your work with Christians for Impact, right? I get it right? Yes, Christians for Impact. Specifically talks about how people can use their careers in pursuit of changing the world, making it better, effective altruism, all that. Can you just talk about these other ways besides just giving money that can also make a difference here, um, and specifically with careers and things of that nature?
So if you think that where you give your money matters, and evidence says that it really does, and the difference is like tens or hundreds of times, between the best and the average, then you might think that where you give your time is just as important or even more important. So there's one group that calculated that the average career is 80,000 hours. That's 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year for your entire
Hmm.
life, right? For 40
Hmm.
years or more. So that's a huge amount of time, and that's a huge resource to steward, to do good for others. And and a lot of people pursue the common advice of following their passion. So they might be passionate about teaching, or passionate about golf, and they pursue that, and they try to make a career out of that. And that might be a good thing, but oftentimes passion isn't as sustainable of a motivation. Passions can change, and sometimes passions don't pay. we
For
we
sure.
provide a framework for Christians who want to use their careers to do good, and we provide free one-on-one advising for Christians who are interested in this. We provide prayer and mentorship, and it also provides a ton of structure. So if you're 23 and talented and you don't know what to do with your life, instead of asking yourself, what am I passionate about, or what do I want to do, which might change month to month, year to year, if you just look at the world's problems and you look at all the lives you can change and all the good you can do, and and figure out how you fit into that, and how you can do the most good towards a problem, that can be very directive. That can provide a lot of answers. And we've advised hundreds of Christians who found that to be helpful, and sometimes found their careers and their calling through that.
I love that so much. I previously, one of the hats I wore was a college minister working with college students, at that pivotal time of what am I going to do with my life. I'm still always figuring out what I'm going to do with my life. We're probably similar ages. I'm 28, still figuring everything out. And so I love all that you just said. That's really cool, and that you provide that coaching and things of that nature.
And it's all
That's
free.
awesome.
We do it for
Yeah,
free
love it.
because we have a pool of hundreds of mentors and advisors who are volunteers who are happy to give advice to younger self. So
Nice.
I've been there too. When I was, again, selling gold in New York, I was like, this is not what I think Jesus would do in my position.
Mm-hmm.
And so having
Fair
someone who
enough.
is older and wiser was really helpful.
Sweet. Love that. Well, JD, I do want you to have a chance to plug all the things, the book coming out soon, or maybe out when you've listened to this, the other projects you got going on, your communities, your nonprofit work. Tell us all the things.
Sure. So the book is called All the Lives You Can Change. It's about how you can turn good intentions into radically great outcomes for the least of these. And we give advice and stories of Christians who've done this and how you can do it with your limited time, talent, treasures. You can order the book now on Amazon, and it's a great book. I wholeheartedly recommend it. We have recommendations from philosophers at Oxford and Princeton, but also Christians like Henry Kasner and other leading evangelicals. If you're feeling lost at all about what direction you should go, or even just how to steward your resources, this is a fantastic book for you. It was a lot of fun to write. And if you're interested in getting career advising, you can sign up for free one-on-one advising at christiansforimpact.org.
Awesome. Yes, very good book. You got some cool co-authors on there too. It's very nice. We'll bring a lot of different perspectives and things. And yeah, I think the analogy I came up with for how I felt about the book is this, okay? It's like chewing a piece of caramel. I don't say caramel, but whatever. It's like chewing a piece of caramel where it's sweet, it tastes good, but I gotta chew it for a while. It takes a little bit. That's kind of how I'm feeling about the book. I like it. It tastes good, but there's some things I gotta wrestle with, some things I gotta think about.
What
Um,
what's still standing out most for you to wrestle with? What are you still chewing?
man,
Sounds like it's that idea of like, how do you balance
it
between
is the idea
the
of
local and the
balance.
global? Yeah.
Yeah, because I I think there's some problems at home that I would like to see taken care of. And I want to be a good steward of my money, my time, my resources. The whole radical stuff, love it, love being radical. But I'm still wrestling with what does that look like, because there's some stuff I do care about at home, um, and I have gone through a lot of shifts in my kind of political thinking and things of that nature. And one of the things I've been more passionate about is my local community, and being much more involved locally than I am on a national when it comes to politics. And how does that think? I mean, we're a globalized world. I don't want to show partiality, but also I do feel that I have some kind of obligation for those that are nearby than far. That's what I'm still chewing on, I would say. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you thought about like having two pots? Like you have one pot that goes globally and one pot that stays local, and maybe splitting that
Okay.
up like 50-50, for instance, might be a good place to start.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. Because I would like to make the world a better place. I think 100% that I need to use my resources and things for the good. I want to change some world. I would love for people not to die here in the United States and in Afghanistan, Uganda, Mali, wherever, right? I think that's good to think about. But yeah, I like
Well,
that.
thanks for thinking about that, Jake, and thanks for your podcast. It's a great
Sure.
podcast. I really enjoyed the episodes, and would definitely encourage listeners to check out the one you did on culture war issues and why you're a veteran of the culture wars.
Yes, yes.
I would consider myself also, although maybe I wasn't as effectively militant as you were. I'm not sure.
I was pretty crazy, my friend, but that's okay. Yeah, but yeah, that's a great one to check out for sure. We did talk a lot about that kind of thing.
But also order the book,
Mhm.
All the Lives You Can Change, on
You should
Amazon.
also order the book. You should also do that for sure. So, JD, thank you so much. We do have one final question that everybody gets asked on the show when we have a guest. And here's the question for you. I'm going to read it exactly. As we close, leave the audience with just one practical action they can do this week to live out their life fully for Jesus?
So I should have prepared more for this. I would
Okay.
challenge you to consider what if God is calling you to do things completely differently with your career, with your money. How confident are you that right now the way you're thinking about it, your careers, the way you're spending your money, how confident are you that this is fully aligned with the way of Jesus? This is fully aligned with the Sermon on the Mount. And if you're not confident, or you think that there might be room for growth, just encourage you to pray about that and to ask God to make your life more radically generous and loving like Jesus is. So maybe ask yourself and pray that prayer. I would really encourage everyone to do that.
No, that's perfect. That's definitely something we can do. We can accomplish that this week. It is very good to ask ourselves the questions, those questions that you posed. But JD Bauman, thank you so much for coming on the show, talking about all the lives you can change, entertaining my musings and devil's advocate ish kind of stuff. Really, truly do appreciate it. I like you. You're a cool guy. Appreciate the work that you're doing. So thanks for being on the podcast. It's been a blast.
Thanks, Jake. Thanks for having me.
And so the last thing I'll say is, hey, share this episode with somebody maybe you want to partner with that can be more effective in that kind of radical generosity, who might want to help you start this journey. That thinks about your career and your giving and your time a little bit differently. I'm sure there's somebody else, maybe a spouse, maybe somebody in your community or church that you can get to join you, so that the whole process is going to be a little bit more easy, because it can be hard to be the absolute weirdo when you start thinking about these things differently. So that's my encouragement. And then once again, JD, thank you so much. This episode of Christianity Without Compromise was hosted by me, Jake Doberenz, and produced by Theophany Media, my podcast production company. If this conversation served you, please rate and review the show and share it with a friend and help others find it. You can also subscribe at jakedoberenz.substack.com to get email updates with new episodes every Tuesday and my often humorous theological reflections on Fridays. And as always, don't just listen, live it. Live out that Christianity without compromise. Thanks for listening.